I got it.
Deb, I'm going to turn it over for you for welcome and.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Farmers Market Forum. We're glad that you're able to join us today for our first virtual forum. I'm Deb Troka, the Executive Director of the Indiana Cooperative Development Center, and we've got a great program for you today with lots of information that we hope will be helpful to you as you begin planning for your 2021 Farmers Market season. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We've got a lot to cover today, but I did want to recognize and thank the partners who've helped plan and execute today's forum. We've got Amanda Baird, Amanda Moseman, Miranda Edge from Purdue Extension, Bob White and Katrina Hall from Indiana Farm Bureau, Naima Gardner, Megan Paskey, Vegeta Wilson, all from the Indiana State Department of Health, Heather Tallman from the Indiana Department of Ag's Indiana Grown Program. And as Amanda mentioned, each of the sessions will have a moderator who will briefly introduce the speakers, and then also someone who will be monitoring the chat box. So if you do have questions, just pop those questions in the chat box and we'll get to as many of those as possible. And just like everything else that we do, this is grant funded, so we have to get some information back from you about what you liked, what you didn't like. So you'll have a couple of opportunities today for some brief surveys while you're online, and then we'll also be sending, and I sent it out this morning in that email to you, a link to a longer survey, which will help us make improvements for next year, as well as determine, kind of what you like this year and how we can improve. Team, are there any last minute comments before we turn it over to the first panel?
I do just want to, during presentations, just to minimize any distractions should something occur, I am going to disable participants from unmuting themselves. I'll turn that back on during Q&A. That is if the settings are working correctly today. So if you do find yourself, hopefully we'll stop any distractions by getting that feature done. So if you can't unmute yourself, so it's quite possible that I have that setting turned off at the current time.
All right, Miranda, I think it's all yours for that first panel.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome again to everyone. We still have a few more people popping in, but we'll go ahead and get started with our first session. This is our COVID-19 adjustments and successes. We have for our panel, Jackie, sorry, I'm gonna probably butcher this, Liu, who's an ag coordinator with the Fishers Farmers Market, Barbara Wilder, who is a market manager for the Broad Ripple Farmers Market, Vivian Muhammad, a vendor with the Elephant Garden, and Angel Frizzell, a market manager for Cordon Farmers Market. Welcome, and you all as panelists are welcome to unmute. And hopefully we can get that going. Angel. Nope.
I turn that back on until we get them upgraded.
Okay, so let's try again for our panelists. I think we did not have you as co-host, so you also got muted. All right, Angel, can you hear me?
I'm good.
All right, I can hear you. And Barbara?
I'm here.
Wonderful. And do we have Jackie?
Yep.
Okay, how do you spell or pronounce your last name?
Lou.
Lou, okay.
Yep.
I was trying too hard. And then Vivian, are you also with us? Nope. All right. We'll hopefully get her on here. Let's go ahead and start. I'm just going to go down my list as I have them. Jackie, would you like to start? Maybe discuss a little bit about what worked and what maybe didn't work, and things that you changed this year or this past year to make your market successful.
Yeah, so my name is Jackie Liu. I work for the City of Fishers. So I kind of had a really unique perspective of it because this was my first year at this job. So I started in January and we were good. And then we all, just like all of you, got thrown into it. So what we actually did is we moved our entire market virtual for 3 weeks. So we created an online platform with Local Food Marketplace to create an entirely virtual market. So all the vendors had their own profile on our website. They could go through and add all their products. And then they would bring it to one of our parks with all of it labeled. And then we would go ahead and pack it into bags. And then on Saturdays, anybody that purchased would come to this park and they would get their items. We'd take it directly to their vehicles. So there was a no contact. And then we also did it where we would deliver it directly to their homes through an app called Routific. And it worked great. The first weekend was a little rough, just trying to figure out everything. The second weekend was even better. So we had over 1,000 orders in those 3 weeks, which we were super excited about just because it was something completely new. And it really seemed to work. After 3 weeks, we went back outside to our Nickel Plate District Amphitheater, and we did it completely spaced around. So if you've ever been to there, it's just a giant circle with our stage on one side and then our city hall on the other. So we spaced them all completely out. Everybody was pretty far away. And then we also put some stickers on the ground, just reminding people, stay 6 feet. We also kept our virtual market during this. So we just kind of only allowed it to be delivery only. We tried to do a delivery charge and it didn't really work out at all. So we switched to no matter where you lived in the Indianapolis area, you got free delivery, even if you spent $5. So that really seemed to work once we took away that delivery charge. And we went through all of September that way. And then we did a fall market where we were completely virtual again and only delivery as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jackie. Next on my list is Barbara. So if you'd like to share a little bit about your market.
Sure. I'm Barbara Wilder, and I've been market manager at the Bartleby Farmers Market. I always like to say I stopped counting at 10 years, so it's been a while. We're unique in some ways as a market. We're completely volunteer run. We're not city hosted or sponsored. We are sponsored by a neighborhood association that's a not-for-profit, but that just tells you they don't have any money either. We first operated as a market as early as 1994, and various forms have continuously operated since then. We've grown over time, and currently during the summer, we have 80 plus or minus vendors, and in the winter, from 25 to 50, depending on what space we have available. This has been the first year that we had an opportunity for more space. So that's created its own kinds of issues. So interestingly, we had a very different approach to COVID. When it happened in March, we were in the middle of our winter market. And so we immediately pivoted. And for those vendors who could do online pre-ordering, we hosted them in a parking lot, and they came and delivered essentially their own pre-orders. And we sort of managed the traffic and the distancing and all that. So we did all that without any guidance yet from the health department because they hadn't put that together. So in April, we got direction from the health department and we were planning our outdoor venue. And in both cases, in the winter market, we couldn't obviously do social distancing in a smaller space, but we also were sort of kicked out of our summer market venue that we'd been in for maybe 15 years because there literally wasn't space for us to social distance, and they knew that. So within 2 weeks, we had to find a new venue. and get it set up and plan for a new season. We got really fortunate in that there was a really large parking lot available. So we started planning for that, and we went through a number of configurations, but I think the challenge was being in a completely unimproved parking lot. So we had to rent a portalet, we had to rent storage units, all kinds of things we'd never done before. We had the good fortune of being able to use paint on the asphalt. So we used marking paint to space out vendors, to indicate where customers should be walking, where they should be waiting in line. Everything was sort of color coded. We had to change configurations over time, which is kind of not relevant, but we ended up in a U shape, which turned out to be nice because we could count entrance and exits, and we've never been able to do that before. So that was really valuable. So I'm sorry, I've got notes here because I could talk for days about this and I don't want to do that. So we in Marion County had probably some of the strictest COVID regulations of any of the counties in the state. So we took the position that we were going to comply to the best of our ability with all of those regulations. And I think in some cases, some markets didn't have the ability to do what the county was asking to do, but we managed to make it happen. So there were a few things that were important that we did. We started with, like a lot of markets did, with a high risk hour, and then opened it up to everyone else. And in that high risk hour, we required people wear masks. And after that, we strongly encouraged. And interestingly, through the whole, until we got back inside even, our mask compliance with our customers was 99%. One of the problems we ran into is by having the safety hour early, those people were, we called it the high risk hour. Having that hour early, they had access to some produce that other customers didn't because they couldn't be there. So we changed our plan and made it a safety hour, and it's open to everyone, but you were required to wear a mask. If you didn't wear a mask, you couldn't enter. We did have a few customers who weren't happy about that, but for the most part, it was well received and that worked well, and we've continued with that. We've done things like reformat the footprint. Midsummer, the county allowed us to bring in ready-to-eat food vendors and non-food vendors, and we could bring back home-based vendors, which had been precluded. So we had originally had 10 feet between vendor spaces. We moved that down to 5 feet, and that worked well and let us bring in those additional vendors. Didn't seem to compromise anything. Everything worked the same. And we're working now for the summer market to take that distance between vendors down even further. But we'll still have this considerable distance in the middle for lines. One of the challenges was getting people to understand where the lines were and how to navigate the market. So we went through, I can't tell you how many cans of marking paint. It had to be 100. And trying to improve how we put arrows to show people how they could sort of walk in front of the vendor without interrupting the line that was waiting, and how to involve themselves in the line if they wanted to do that. It took a while, but eventually people got the hang of it, and that's worked pretty well for us. We didn't have mandatory one-way traffic, but there was kind of a natural one-way traffic because they sort of came in on one side and exited on the other side. Let's see what else. We did stick with our pre-orders. That first part in March and April, we did pre-order only, and we continued with pre-orders and continue with that today, although some vendors have kind of dropped out of doing it, and I think that's working okay. So we had vendors set up a separate pickup spot in their booth space so that people there just to pick up a pre-order could go there and get their pre-order more efficiently than if they were waiting in line to choose produce to purchase. I think I think that's mostly what I wanted to be sure to talk to you about. I think just to kind of sum it up real quickly, I think what made our COVID response as successful as it was is that we have been around for a long time. We have relationship with these vendors and they are really good at working with us. And so we got really good compliance from them and they really appreciated what we were doing to keep the market open for them. A lot of our vendors have restaurant business and so they lost all that business. So it was important for us to stay open. Same with our customers. Over time, we've developed a really loyal customer following. And that's not to say we never had any complaints, but they were far outnumbered by the customers who made a point of thanking us for keeping the market open for them. So they had food source that they felt really good about. And then probably the most important thing, since we're a volunteer-run market, is having a super dedicated volunteer team. And what happened over the course of this last year is we went from a scenario where I was the only volunteer who was there for the entire day and other folks came in shifts to the point where I have 4 people now who are there with me the whole entire time from setup to tear down. And they've become very committed and really important resource for the market. So it's just interesting how things have evolved, but at this point, we're feeling pretty good about it.
Thank you. Sorry. Angel, why don't you go ahead while we're still waiting on Vivian?
All right, thank you so much. First of all, I do need to let you all know that my partner in crime with our farmers market is Miranda. So anything that I talk about was definitely a partnership with her and is much appreciated. It definitely makes our lives a little easier to not have it all fall onto one person. So working with the Purdue Extension Office has been amazing. Miranda and I seem to get a lot accomplished when the two of us just sit down with a cup of coffee. So I do appreciate her for all the help that she gives us. Our farmers market is part of Main Street Cordon, and I am the executive director of Main Street. So that is one of my priorities, is to run that particular project. And I definitely find it a lot of fun. With COVID, of course, it made it very interesting this year. We did choose to ramp up pretty quickly in person. We didn't have a delay, except on Miranda, in all honesty, it kind of goes together. I don't think we started on the first day, but about a week or so after. We have an open air market that has a significant amount of space in between the 2 lines of the shelter. So that gave us the opportunity to really spread things out when it came to people lining up at each market. And we utilized good old duct tape, colorful duct tape, to put the different spots from each booth of where they stood at the table, and then at least 4 or 5 X's going backwards so that they would know that each person should social distance in that manner. That seemed to work pretty well, except for on a couple of the really popular booths. And with those, there was one that is so popular, we basically had to put them into 2 spaces, and we were able to do so this year. Or we would try to push them out on the side just a little bit if there was an area that a vendor wasn't using all of their space. So at least for their table display. And that definitely assisted with trying to keep that crowd down. It's a popular crowd that gathers at that table. So there were a lot of people who just wanted to get up to the table, try to find their produce before anybody else could grab what they wanted. So we did have to stay, pretty involved, being out there, talking with not only the vendors, so they understood all the social distancing rules, but also the individuals. So just as a reminder, most of the time that was taken pretty well. There were one or two people that don't like it, and they wanted to get up there, get their stuff and head on out. But unfortunately, they have to follow the rules too. So it's just a matter of chit-chatting with them and talking with them. And we seem to turn most of them around and, being happy. And then with that booth, we just really tried to work with them as much as we can to help them set up in a manner that would be cohesive to what was happening for the market. Got to check my notes here. One of the good things was that the individual vendors were so well scripted with what the rules were that they were able to talk to people as they came in. We, for several weeks, tried to do an in and out situation where we had the caution tape and signs, they come in this way, leave this way. That really doesn't work when you're in a big open air market like that, because people are still going to go under the caution tape. They're going to go and cut through the booths. And so we did have to deal with that a little bit. And when we did, we just talked to those folks to let them know it's important for them to come in and out the same way. We tried to kind of keep it going in that cohesive manner. But again, when you've got a place that big and that many people coming together, it can be difficult. So it was frustrating, but we just continued to keep a good smile on our face and, you know, adjust as necessary. We found a few other ways to kind of move that caution tape around and or utilize eventually a food truck to be kind of the barrier. Our food trucks are in the at the end of one of the sections of the market. And so what we did is utilized one side as the in and one side as the out. And that seemed to kind of help it flow a little bit better. We didn't start with the food trucks right away. Generally, we like to have 2 food trucks. This year, we just went with one, a very popular one, which drew in some new people to come in and purchase from the farmers market. And he had a line constantly. And so that was another area where we needed to maintain that social distancing, and it worked out really well. So utilizing that as a prop, as a barrier on each side did help us. And in addition, drawing more people. Now, generally, with our farmers market, because of the significant area in the middle with picnic tables and everything to that nature, we have a lot of people that like to stay and eat, you know, hang out with their kids and friends. We generally have entertainment, music. This year, I actually did block off those tables for a good portion of the season so that they could not gather at them. Most people did take their food home. There was a lot of takeout from the barbecue place, and then they wandered around and grabbed a few other things, which is the whole point of that. The entertainment, that was hard not having that. So of course, you know, from time to time we utilize some somebody's little boom box or, you know, off of our phones just to have some music going. And generally though, our big entertainment was one single man. And you've probably seen some Facebook posts about the booth with the old men and all that giving advice, which is very comedic. This is a gentleman that does that. And so he sits up in our little gazebo area, and he sits there and just people come up and say, I need some advice, and he'll give them advice. And it's about nothing, but it's comedic and it entertains them. They maintain the social distancing. So that brought a little bit of a relaxation and fun experience while they were there. So he's an old coot offering his life advice. And generally, like I asked him, I went up and said, I need advice. And it had absolutely nothing to do with me. And another time it basically was saying, make sure you get a rich man before you get married. Well, I said, you're too late. But that was a nice way to bring that in, as everyone is so stressed during COVID. And, you know, you've got to have that humor. So that was important. We do have wagons, good old red wagons that we have laid out around the market for people to use to get their items and take them to their car and just to shop. Well, of course, at first we did not unlock those and bring them out. We did wait. And then once we felt it was appropriate, I kept them at the information booth. And if someone wanted one, they would come up and obtain it from us. And that way we could make sure it was sanitized before and after. So they still had that ability. We do have a lot of elderly people. So that is really important to be able to provide that. When we couldn't, we would offer, and so would some of the vendors, to take the items to their cars. Those watermelons can be pretty heavy. Let's just see. And of course, we did have, our information booth with masks, face shields. I gave a few of those out to some of the vendors to help them. And of course, we had lots of hand sanitizer. So that was readily available. One of the key things we did too to make it fun and still draw people in and to go around to more booths, because some would have that focus. I'm going to this booth, grab my stuff, and I'm getting out. But still trying to keep them safe, we offered a giveaway every week. And we just had the little, red tickets that you can get at Walmart, and they put their name and their phone number on the back. So every time they bought something from one of the vendors, they would get one of those tickets, and they would fill that out and bring it to our booth and drop it in a little jar. And then the vendors donated the items. So they were like the vendor of the day. So we would make announcements and put it on Facebook Live that this was the giveaway. It might've been candles. It might've been baked goods, different things to that nature. And that really increased a lot of sales going around the market. And also we were able to talk with a lot of the people as they brought them up and engage them to kind of find out where they're from, and get to know a little bit more about the people that are coming to our market and what they like and what they'd like to see. We also did a raffle this year that was helpful, and it was in 3 segments. And it was a farm to table style giveaway. So because of the social distancing and everything, we couldn't have a farm to table event. So the first one was basically your summer cookout. And we had an insulated bag monogrammed with our logo. And then the different vendors provided the items to go in it. So one of our meat vendors donated, hamburgers, and then you had your vegetables, you had a dessert from one of our dessert people, our winery, a bottle of wine, things like that. So it filled it up to feed a family of 4. And then the second one was a couple's dinner. So we had steak and more wine and vegetables and all kinds of goodies and desserts. And the last one was the back to school. So everything mom or dad needed to just kind of get that quick dinner going, with some chicken and whatnot, and some fun sweets for the kids and everyone. And those went very well. And I think we are going to be doing that again with the different themes, because it did highlight all of our vendors. It was something they could take home and enjoy and not have to worry about maybe going to a restaurant on a night that, or going to the store, oh, I need this, and this for dinner. So just a kind of a fun way to bring that in. We're a very social market, and so kind of bringing those elements in to distract from the COVID definitely made a difference on our end. And I think that's all I have, unless there were some questions. Okay.
Okay, we'll have questions here after
Okay.
hear from Vivian. Thanks, Angel.
Got it.
Vivian, are you able to unmute and share your responses from the COVID outbreak at the market this year?
Greetings, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So, a couple of things. Prior to COVID, so let's say 2019, we, through an organization that we developed called the Black Independent Growers, sponsored 2 markets. One was at Zion Hope Church, 46th in Arlington. The other was at St. Andrews at 38th and Forest Manor. At the beginning of 2020, prior to COVID really being understood to be what it was, we met with our market sponsors, those that worked with us at those 2 locations, and made plans for market for 2020. And those plans included basically more markets. We were going to do markets every Sunday and Saturday versus what we had done previously, which was once a month. In order to facilitate that, we were going to create a board whereby others other than ourselves, the actual growers, could help facilitate the whole markets, because as you all know, markets all by themselves are a whole thing. without having to also grow the food to provide to the market. So the plan was that we would be responsible for getting all of the growers at the market, and someone else would take care of, the board would see to it that the signage and the literature and all of the other vendors would participate. Once COVID hit, all of that fell apart for two reasons. The church completely shut down. A lot of their members were older. A lot of their members are African American, and were hit really hard with the virus itself. There were many deaths. There were a lot of people hospitalized, sick, so they just stopped altogether. Same thing happened with St. Andrews. So all of a sudden we were in the middle of not having places to actually hold our market. Well, to a certain extent, and let me say this, that COVID has what seemed as though a negative impact, but the way it got flipped, it ended up being, at the end of the season, looking back at it, a very good thing. So let me explain that. That forced us, that change in venue, forced us to do what we had kind of talked about in the very beginning, and really it forced us to reevaluate our original plan for the Elephant Gardens, which was to bring food to our community. So it forced us to go back on site and have our markets at our Sherman Drive location. We had received grant money from SARE to be able to build our health and beauty bodega up and our farm stand, our what we called our mobile pharmacy. So even though those tasks got slowed down because the people that we had hired to do the work had quarantine issues, there were all kinds of issues that caused them to not be able to build or do what they had intention within the time frame that we had originally planned, which was early spring, so that by the time it was market time, we'd have those things in place. The mobile pharmacy's whole point was to be able to go to the senior living facilities, 4 of them that we had identified within our community, and bring food to them on site. All of that got changed with COVID. COVID really, because senior living facilities got hit hard too, all of that changed because we didn't feel it was safe for us. My mother's 78 now, and we didn't feel like it was safe to go to the senior living facilities for them or for us. And so all of that required a whole revamp of the entire season. But like I said, that ended up being a good thing. Once we did get the mobile pharmacy in place, once we did decide, okay, well, we're just going to have to be open on site and do the work on site at Sherman, it caused us to revisit our initial mission statement. And we realized that, well, heck, we're more in line with our original mission statement than we had been. So, because our original mission statement was to cater specifically to the neighborhood in which we live. Now, being at St. Andrews was right down the street from our home, so that was still within the mission, but this made it even more succinct because we had to be right there at Sherman where we actually grow the food. What we did was open our mobile pharmacy, and our little mobile pharmacy just folds out and we stay on the inside. So the social distancing was already there. We wore masks, all of our customers wore masks. And we serviced our customers throughout the rest of the season through that mobile pharmacy farm stand that sits really in front of our garden. What that did for us was allow for us to continue our garden work and our growing while we service customers, and it brought people back to the front face of our business, which is the Elephant Gardens Sherman location. And so those things were the good part. It caused us to also get a little bit more creative in how we sold our produce, and we were kind of disconnected from, to be honest, the rest of our growers initially, because normally at a farmer's market, you're around all your growers, you're around everyone else, and we decided not to do that. We didn't even participate in other people's farmers markets for the fact that we just didn't feel it was safe. The benefits, let me say this, because we have been saying for years now that the Black community needed more attention as it pertained to the food insecurity and food access issues. And we have been pounding on this idea of the direct correlation between comorbidities like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, etc., and the and food deserts, and the fact that the two kind of go hand in hand. That where you find a plethora of McDonald's and fast food restaurants and gas station chicken and junk food distributors, and a lack and simultaneously a lack of your healthy food dispensaries, your grocery stores that sell organic produce, etc., that are within walking distance of that neighborhood, you're going to find that these comorbidities are higher. And of course, that is definitely the case in Indiana and in Indianapolis in particular, and in our neighborhood specifically. So what COVID did was validate and highlight the consequences that happen when you neglect a community and when a community doesn't have the healthy produce choices at their disposal. And so it heightened for us a need to continue to do what we were doing. It validated the principle upon which we had originally started the Elephant Gardens, because what started happening was that in our communities, COVID started going crazy because of the comorbidities. 40% of those who die from COVID-19 have diabetes, 40%. So this direct relationship between comorbidities and COVID-19, severe cases of COVID-19 and death from COVID-19 are all interrelated. And those all then tie back to what we do. So COVID, in an ironic type of way, gave us fuel to keep going. Because, you know, I'm sure all of you know in this industry, when you're out there working or when you're doing, sometimes you're like, what, okay, why did I decide to do this? Because it can be kind of hard at times. And this was one of those events that caused us to see that what we were doing is not only important and valuable, but it is so needed. So it helped us in that sense from a morale point of view, and also from a point of view of, hey, we need to continue to do what we're doing, scale up and do more. And by being back at Sherman, it brought the neighborhood back to us at that location and helped us to highlight what we were doing. A lot of what we had initially wanted to do, God willing, we're going to do this year. Unfortunately, for instance, COVID knocked out our 4-H program for the year, because by the time 4-H gave us the permission to start up again, we were already reeling, honestly, and trying to just deal with getting the market piece up, because, you know, when the players dropped out, as far as our 2 locations, we had to revamp, rethink everything. And so by the time we got permission to do the Tomorrowland's Children Junior Master Gardener program that we do, we initiated that in 2019. It was a little too late, and a lot of our students were already enrolled in other virtual programs, or not in any program and not willing to be in any program because of the fear that surrounded COVID, which I don't know how it affected other communities, but there was a real palatable fear in our community about contracting COVID because of the high mortality rates within our community. We lost one farmer who lived down the street from us to COVID early on. So it was very personal and it impacted us on a very deep level. So what we did once we leveled out, and I say the leveling maybe took place in July, meaning, okay, this is how our season's going to be. This is what we're going to do. We set in place the mobile farm stand and mask wearing, social distancing. If someone wanted, normally we would allow people to come in and out of the garden, and if they wanted tomatoes, they could pick the tomatoes themselves. When we were selling on site, we didn't do any of that. We just went and got all the produce, brought it back. We wore gloves, masks, the whole 9 yards. It was just different in that sense. But overall, in spite of the setbacks, and we feel as though it was a win for us in the sense that it brought us back to our core mission, and it validated the work that we've been doing and the stance that we've taken. And the grant that we had received, which was a SARE grant, had postulated that we needed to find ways to make eating nutrient-dense food and having access to nutrient-dense food more real and more available to our community. COVID, as I mentioned before, helped to validate the need for that. We weren't able to go to the senior living facilities, but in our grant, that is exactly what we had intended to do, was to focus on senior living facilities with our mobile pharmacy, because the year prior, really the 2 years prior, 2018 and 19, we had gone to senior living facilities in our neighborhood, and they needed us there so bad. And so being able to go to them with the mobile pharmacy was a really exciting thing. Basically, we had proposed a CSA initially. We had done research, we had done questionnaires, we had visited the senior living facilities on multiple occasions to see what they really wanted. Do you want a CSA? And what we found overwhelmingly was that they were like, well, I don't really want to commit a certain amount of money per month, but I would love it if you brought produce to us. And so that is what gave birth to the mobile pharmacy and our idea of bringing the produce to them on a weekly basis. Like I said, COVID kind of stymied that, or at least for last year, because of, the senior living facilities just got hit so hard. And because my mama is a senior and I'm really getting close, we decided that it would be best to hold on that. Our goal, however, is this year to, in fact, go use the mobile pharmacy to go to the senior facilities that we identified. There are 4 in our that are very near proximity to our garden. So we picked those 4. And our goal is to go there this year, masked up still, and gloves, masks, the whole 9, the social distancing, seniors coming out one at a time to shop, that kind of thing. But we do plan on doing it this year. Now that I think this past year, 2020, and I think you all can agree, we really didn't know what we were dealing with or how. And in our community, we really didn't know how to navigate it at first. Now that we feel a little bit more confident about the ways in which to protect ourselves and for the seniors to be protected, we are planning to, God willing, go out to the senior facilities along with staying put at our mobile pharmacy. We have found that the on-site selling is very important to our community. And so our market at this point is on site. We are not, we don't plan to do a neighborhood market at St. Andrews. They're still closed down, so is the church. And so because of those limitations, which at first we looked at in a very negative light, that it was bad, very bad. Since that time, like I said, we've come to terms with that, but we see that there's a blessing in it for us being on site. So we've received a little bit more help from the city, and we're going to create a platform to make the shopping experience on site more easy, user-friendly, so to speak. So there's going to be a platform for the mobile farm stand when it's actually on site. There's going to be parking in the back. They're helping us to clear the alleyway in the back. There's going to be seating and other things to make the shopping experience on site better. And we're really excited about that because we believe that now is the time for us to make sure that the people in our neighborhood know that we're there. And we are partnering also with a few of the grocery stores in the area that have just popped up, small grocery stores.
Vivian, I'm sorry, we've only got 10 more minutes and we've got
no
a lot
problem.
of great questions. I'm so sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. You know, it's not a problem. I just wanted to make sure that I was thorough. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of great information from everyone, so thank you very much. Lajita, I think you are our chat facilitator. Would you be able to go through and start looking at the questions so we can get some answers?
I have been compiling them into a separate document so that I didn't lose them in chat.
Thank you.
Oh, I attempt to do the very best job I can for you. And I'll just go in the order of the speakers. Questions for Jackie. Did you lose any vendors because of the virtual market?
To start out, we didn't really lose too many, maybe like one or two, but most of them figured out how to kind of do it. So one that we had was the Walking Waffle, if any of you are familiar with them. So they make on-site things. They are concessions. So they kind of pivoted, and all they did was that they could still participate was frozen waffles then in packages, which were really great for they were home, everybody was home anyway, so the parents could grab them and then still utilize them. So we didn't really have that big of a drop off on vendors for online.
Thank you. How many vendors participate in the Fishers Market?
We have about 60 vendors.
Great. And do you have a page or website that people could see the product and order, and were your vendors satisfied with it? Someone posted a link into chat. So the question would be, were your vendors satisfied with your solution?
So at first they were not. We are a city ran market. So certain things fell out of our control, which was fine. We just kind of went with it. At first they were not, and we had a lot of discussions about it. But once it kind of started going, and we kind of hit, 200 orders, 300 orders, 400 orders in that first weekend, they kind of were on board with it then, just to make sure that they were still getting that momentum that they were going to get an outdoor market. And you can also go to, I think Amanda had posted the website. It's just Local Food Marketplace. And then that was like the company we went through. And then the Fishers Farmers Market has like their own page. I believe there's a couple other markets that had utilized them as well.
Great, thank you. Questions for Barbara of Broad Ripple Farmers Market. If your market is all volunteer with no city sponsorship, how were paint and supplies paid for? Also interested in grant, whether you use grants or vendor fees.
The answer basically is vendor fees. I don't know that we exceeded our vendor fees and what our total spend was, but if we had, the Broad Ripple Village Association would have helped us out. We contemplated whether we would have to ask vendors for more money, but we ended up in a pretty good spot.
Excellent. Excellent. Was the pre-order done through each individual vendor's point of sale or through a combined market site or sales platform?
It was through each individual vendor. They set up often they use Square, or most of them use Square or some other product they were familiar with. But what we do is every Tuesday before the market, we send out an email to our entire customer list, reminding them to pre-order, and then with a link to our entire list of vendors, which would link then to their pre-order page.
Great, thank you. The next set of questions is for Angel at Corydon Farmers Market. How did the customers react to the social distancing?
Most of them reacted very well and were compliant. There were a few that gave us a little bit of a hard time. And that again is when we just tried to talk to them one-on-one and let them know, we're sorry that, this is the situation, but we do have to follow the rules for everyone's safety. And I think overall, really, I only had one lady kind of say some words back to me and behind my back. And of course, the people around her kind of smiled at me and they knew, it's nothing you can do. So they just made sure to just kind of separate from her. So overall, it went really well. We just had to do a little reminders here and there. And I'm one of those, happy-go-lucky people. So I go out there with the big cheerful smile. And of course, you can't see it, but apparently with my mask on, you can still tell. So overall, good. In fact, I have to say, I didn't preface this earlier, this was one of our most successful years. And our vendors were extremely happy. Several of them had record sales numbers.
Great. And how did your customers react to online ordering and just pickup?
As far as that went, it was with the individual vendors themselves. And so they would get the order from them. We also have a seafood company that comes in. I imagine some of you in this area might have them too, AB Seafood. They just get their orders online on Facebook, and then they have it packaged. So when they arrive, boom, it's there and they pick it up and pay and go. And everyone seemed to appreciate that. And I found though that most of them, even though they were just coming to pick up from a certain vendor or two, they still ended up walking around some.
Great. What type of food truck was the most popular at the market?
Barbecue. That is a popular one in our area. And we have a ton of amazing award-winning, I call them barbecue artists in our area. And this one gentleman that we had for the first time definitely was popular. But we also have a taco truck. We've had hamburger hot dog style. We've had actual caterers set up a booth tent. And then what we started to do this past year and moving into this year is we're asking nonprofits, because we know that their donations are down, asking if they would like a free booth at one of the markets and put together something. We're looking more for fun foods. So, root beer floats and cotton candy and things like that, but give them an opportunity to have a free spot to try to gain some funds for their organization.
That leads right into the next question. With the food trucks, does your market get a % of their profits, charge for a space, or are they used as a bonus just for the market with no cost to trucks?
They do pay for a spot for the year. We don't get anything else from them other than that.
Okay, great. There was some discussion back and forth regarding the mention of selling wine. Mm-hmm. How were you able to sell the wine as a municipality, or are you not a municipality?
Well, the property is owned by the town, and they basically lease it to us for basically $1, nothing. And we run everything having to do with the farmers market through our nonprofit, Main Street Cordon. So with that, the individuals can utilize their winery festival permits. So I have one winery that doesn't do a lot of the festivals. So they just take all their permits and they would come every single week. And then this past year, we had a winery who is normally at every festival because they're so popular, Best Winery, that because they couldn't, they did come on board, and actually it went so well, they're coming back again. So they just have to, send their permit information in with the location of their booth, and they sign off on it and say, yep, you can go do that. And then now actually they are going to potentially be able to do tastings also of their distilled products going forward. So that's something new that's being processed through. And of course, it's all, we maintain it. It's just some simple samplings, and then they can buy things to go home. And but we did have slushies this year, adult and children slushies from that booth, and that was extremely popular.
Thank you. And last question, how did the drawing work with pickup? Did the winner come back at the end of the market to pick it up?
So with the individual weekly ones, we would call them right at the end of about 10 minutes before the end of the market. And if they were close by, they'd come right back and get it. Otherwise, it would be arranged to pick up the following week. So if it was a baked good, they knew they could come the following week and get it. And then with the big raffle, it was that they would pick it up the following week. That way, when we came and set up at the market, we could gather everything fresh, and they would meet us at a certain time during the market, take a great photo opportunity, and off they went with their goodies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last questions are for Vivian, and then one for everyone. Someone in the group said that they missed where your market is located. Vivian, would you mind sharing that address?
Yes, the address is 3348 Sherman Drive, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46218. And our website is www.theelephantgardens.net. You can also go to www.theelephantgardensindy.com. Either one will lead you there. And we do have a starter plant pre-order form there if anybody's interested in organic starter plants pre-ordering.
That would be me. And who were your partner farmers?
Ooh, good question. Legacy of the Taste, which is, they're located in near Vincennes, Indiana. They are a historic farm that we worked with, and they brought up things like watermelon, cantaloupe, sweet corn, and a lot of other wonderful things to market that we ourselves didn't grow, which was a great benefit. We also had Sharana Moore with Lawrence Community Gardens. We had Taisha Ahmed, and we had with Mother Love's Garden, Cherie, with Three Sisters, Cherie Tony, not Cherie Tony, but Cherie with Three Sisters, and Cherie Hood. And who else did we have? All of our, I'm trying to think of all of our vendors that we had for our markets, farm vendors. Oh, so many, gosh. Harvest House, which was really in Lebanon, Indiana. We call them an information vendor, but they sold honey for us, and we actually have a partnership with them with St. Peter's Episcopal Church, and we farm 1/8 of an acre there as well. And who else were some of our farmer partners? Oh, I should mention some of the locals, what we did with some of the growers, like we call her Mama Camille, she and Tuba Gardens, which is Tuba Gardens and which is Mambuso, that runs Tuba Gardens. Mama Camille grows food in partnership with another organization. I can't remember their name. She would bring food to market. We also set up relationships with them because in 2019, we also were with community. We worked with the Community Health Network, donated a lot of food to the pantry, and also sold, had a market in partnership with Legacy of the Taste, the first garden I mentioned at Community Hospital. So right off the top of my head, those are the ones I can think of. There are others, and I'm gonna hit myself over the head for not remembering them all. I can't hear. I can't hear.
Legita might have.
It's me.
Okay.
I was killing the cat noises in the background.
Okay.
If all four of you, if you haven't done this already, because there are questions, please post in the chat the the periods of time, dates, times, hours of operations for your markets or stands, because there's a lot of interest there.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Legita, there is one more question, and we've got we're a little over on time, but maybe you all can add to the chat as well. What advice would you give vendors going into 2021? And that'll allow us to have about a 5-minute break for anything that you need to go grab a drink or check on some messages or anything like that. And we will start with our next topic at 10:10, and that is food safety at farmers markets.
Is that question for me or was that just in general?
Yeah, if you want to type it in the chat, that's fine. But another option for us is to go ahead. We have your emails. We can, if there were any unanswered questions, we can give you an email and then post that to the website as a resource. So everybody makes sure to get what they need in. So we can do that as well. Thank you all so much. That was absolute fabulous information.